All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go ahead and get started with our Education and Culture Committee meeting this morning. We have an update today from our Montgomery Coalition for Adult English Literacy. I have to get that right because that's one of the things that we always talk about that a lot of people oftentimes get wrong. I really do want to thank Ms. Stevens for doing a great job of reaching out to the broader community about ideas that you had in terms of how to take McHale to the next level, something that's been incredibly important to all of us. We know that as we continue to grow, and we see it in our schools from our population of increasing immigrants in our community, and we know that for them to be able to be a vested part of our community, there has to be the ability for them to be able to communicate with the rest of our community as well. We welcome the diverse cultures and the diverse languages. We know that that's incredibly important and supportive to all of us in our community, but we also know that it's hard to get around and do the things that you need to do without having that language acquisition in the native home language wherever you are. And so from that perspective, that is important as well. And so we really want to thank McHale and its board for its great commitment, all of your staff members who continue to work hard every day. I know that our county executive, who used to be a part of this committee, was always very intent in terms of understanding the level of wait time that you have in terms of folks that are waiting for services, and was very overall supportive of the mission. And so we hope, as always, that all of those priorities are reflected in budget deliberations. We know that there's so much more that needs to be done on all levels of government, and so we know that you're helping to address that with your nonprofit. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Carolyn Shen, our staff member, unless folks have any opening remarks. If not, Ms. Chen, I'll let you walk us through the packet. And I do want to just acknowledge that Councilmember Duando may have to step out to attend one of our other committee meetings that's happening at the same time. Ms. Chen.
Hi, everybody. Doing today. Oh, there's obviously. I'll just walk you through the packet so you know what information there is, and then kind of guide you on what we'll be talking about today, and then after Kathy gives her update. We have just a 2-page summary memo of the organizational update, the structure of McHale, and then on the second page are just a few of the highlights of McHale. There were so many, so I had to try to pick out the ones that might be interesting in this particular time. Page 3 are just. Page 3 is the committee discussion topics to consider. Kathy and I went through her update as well as my packet to see what would be interesting things for you guys to talk about. And on page 4 and 5 is a 3-year side-by-side funding history of McHale's program grantees as well as literacy access grantees. Thought that would be interesting. And then on page 6, you'll see that we've summarized what's in your packet. We have the summary of the accomplishments from Kathy from McHale, and then the strategic plan from 2018 to 2021, the FY19 final county report, and a infographic of the 2020 grant awards. So with that, we'll start off with Kathy, and then we'll have our discussion points.
Sure, thank you. So I'm just going to highlight a few things that are kind of particularly new and different and let you know what we have, and then happy to have any questions, interrupt as we go along. When Councilmember Rice was introducing us as Montgomery County and then caught himself, Montgomery Coalition, we did do some work over the past 6 months or so with an organization called Collaborative Communications that works with education groups. Something I've been wanting to do in the 8 years that I've been at McHale is kind of just say, do we have the best tools to communicate who we are and what we do to the widest number of people? Because I continue to think we can broaden our reach, not only for adult learners, but people in the community to understand what it means to have English ability for all the things that adults want to do. So we have a new logo and a new tagline, keeping the name the same, but really focusing on McHale. And it's going to be launched on February 15th. We're really excited about it. But just as a preview for you all, it really speaks to our work as the hub of the coalition, and coalition being that operative word, and how we really are trying to make sure that we continue to build a system, a network, not only of the providers that are already in the network, the larger social service agencies we work with, the partnerships with MCPS, MCPL, but also smaller, newer community organizations, whether it's a church in East County, whether it's an organization of parents at a school, that kind of thing, to make sure that we continue to build that, and then build it in with the business community as well, and others who I think need to know about this and continue to contribute to a welcoming, successful community where everyone can communicate. So that's forthcoming. I'm not going to spoil the surprise, but Councilmember Rice did participate in one of our many stakeholder interviews on that to give us some feedback on that. And the coalition is an important piece of that. As you know, we're trying to increase access points continually for learners to kind of get into the system. What I gave you are my little party favor for today is the recently published this fall, our Program Administrator Toolkit. It's really a toolkit for instructors and program administrators. This is put together, we had a key writer, Alex Galen from Montgomery College, but you will see that it has best practices, stories, anecdotes, sample approaches from, I think I counted up, over 20 of the county providers. Again, we're a network of people who do this on the ground, and this is available free of charge to anyone in the county. We presented on this at a national conference back in September, and it's meant to be it's really hands-on work that someone who wants to start or better their program or better their class can use. It's also available. We have it for sale on our website. We're leveraging some different fund resource kinds of things. We're not selling gobs of them yet, but we got some interest at the national conference. It's an important tool. There's nothing like this that we saw when we scanned the area, and I think it really showcases the good work that folks use. We're also continually, and this is something that we're really trying to focus on, looking for new instructors. This is not the kind of volunteer opportunity that many of our great safety net social service volunteer opportunities offer in the county. You can't come in twice a month and give food away or something like that. All very important. Being an English instructor requires a little bit more of a commitment. So we've doubled the number of trainings that we're doing. We have a 2-day kind of immersive, more learning, less teaching with good success. We are increasing our collaboration with the TED program at Montgomery College. They train instructors. We're just enhancing what we've already been doing, but creating more opportunities for those trained instructors to know our programs and create the synergies there. We're also going to be looking at the Retired Teachers Association, if there are folks there who want to come teach. MCPS has been extremely helpful. I've been working with Dr. Maria Navarro a lot this fall on getting in front of folks at the schools, the parent community coordinators, principals, and they've been good enough to send out via email, are you interested in teaching? Obviously, we know our MCPS teachers are working very hard, but there's some who might want to do some additional things, particularly in the East Hall area, seeing the synergies. And we had some interest when we said to folks, hey, you can teach in this spectrum as well. We know we need more focused work here. We're continuing to work on that, and just bringing more people in to who can be an ESOL instructor. What does it take? The other thing that we're doing to increase the access points, and I'm going to talk about one thing that we thought would work, and I'm not so sure it's our answer to answers, and another thing that we're just starting to pilot. As you know, we've been taking classes to workplaces with the idea that someone who's at work already has got childcare and transportation taken care of. It's a win-win for the employer can support them. It just doesn't give us the numbers. It's important, but it's not giving us the numbers. We've also gained some fee for service there. It takes a lot of staff time to really work one-on-one with the companies. So I'm not saying we're going to push it to the side, but where we're focusing some renewed energy is on the use of some applications for phones that parents can use. Parents can maybe even use them with their kids. And we're piloting those, I think, in 6 places this spring, starting in February, this month. February already, with a couple schools, couple kind of workplace programs, there's a shouldn't say, it's a Spanish ministry in East County that's interested in piloting this. Using apps on phones is not necessarily a full substitute for classes. We're good. Learning apps are not a substitute for full classes, but we think we can get to folks, in between times when the registrations aren't open for classes. When someone expresses interest, you want to be able to meet them right there and say, can't get you in a class right now, but here's something you can do. The app that we're using is called Learning Upgrade. We're also going to probably pilot one called Voxy. Learning Upgrade was used by the San Diego Public Library System very successfully. And we think it's going to give us another moment to meet people where they are. You can get a lot of kind of data from how someone's progressing, so then you can better coach them into what class they might go to. It's another opportunity for us to test and use technology, meet people where they might not be able to get into a formal 10-week, 12-week class, but get them on a pathway, keep them on a pathway for English. Yeah.
Thank you, Kathy. Well, that was going to be my question,
Yeah.
especially because we know that our immigrant community, utilizes devices and obviously internet at a very high rate.
Right.
And it seems like, given the scope of our need, we've always say this year after year, and the difficulty to meet that. I was really curious about what kind of, apps are out there that have been proven to have really great results, and try to actually focus and market those as much as possible, or brand those as much as possible to track that. Because as you said, I'm not surprised about the workplace results. We know that people are super busy. It's very difficult. It's high resource, high intensity. But again, given the high rate of utilization of this, when has that already begun?
We are just starting this month. We wanted to take enough time internally to test the products ourselves and get some information and find some different, I want to pilot them with kind of different types of cohort groups, because not all apps will work for every type of learner. If someone has a higher level of education in their home country, different app might work better. So we are, again, trying to look at several of these. We think that we can leverage kind of the buying power of the licenses. The more licenses you buy, the better you can, the less expensive they are. So we're looking at that. We also just brought onto our board someone from Rosetta Stone, which obviously is one of the bigger ones, and I think he's going to help give us some guidance on some things like this. But it's, again, it's not a be-all to end-all, but it seems like such a smart move with everyone using their phones so much and using things. Even those of us who use or try to use Duolingo, right, to learn another language, makes some sense.
Well,
so.
right. We are in the thrust of technology.
Yes.
You mentioned Rosetta Stone. Of course, we all know about that. But I think there are some opportunities to partner maybe with our library system, to figure out how we can then scale this with that kind of bundling, if you will. But to me, it makes complete sense. I think we underestimate how much of an impact this can have on our immigrant community. And I assume that, like with anything, there would be some kind of assessment, I guess, in terms of where you can start. And I don't know if we're going to touch upon the issue of Spanish language literacy, which is something I've been bringing up during these sessions for years. But that is another very important component. And so I don't know if you're going to talk about that. I would love to know what's going on.
I can talk about that right now. I provided.
Let's
You would.
because I don't want to jump ahead. And
Sure.
know that Richard wanted to say something about what you were talking about first, and then we can go into that. And I did want to say something else about coding. So, Councilmember Richard Wando.
I just want to say it's a great update, and as lead for libraries, Rosetta Stone is free at all of our libraries. Most people don't know
Good.
that.
I didn't know that either.
Oh, see, I figured. So Craig and I've been preaching that we're doing some films on highlighting all the resources that our library provide. But I think, to Councilmember Navarro's point, they are already doing a lot of language classes already. I think that partnership could be even tighter. Like I said, that resource, it's not free. The county pays for it for our residents. And it's a good resource, but underutilized. So
Yeah, we're working. One of the things with the libraries that we're working on is getting a little bit more training. Their conversation classes can be different across all libraries, and we want to make sure that we're helping them get, using tools like this, get to all the levels.
I just add that to Councilmember Navarro's point, when it comes to the coding piece and the apps, Montgomery College is doing a lot of work around this right now in partnership with MCPS around coding and app development. And so I think it would be a great pilot to have folks that are challenged with this. I know that we have our Montgomery Can Code initiative that happens every single summer. And so that'd be a great target to have some folks think about that as they look at doing this. But there's a lot of other stuff that's in the works also. So I think this would be a great opportunity for folks to really try and tackle something like that. So certainly work with both of you and connect them with Montgomery College and MCPS on that front. So that's a great idea.
Okay.
Back to you.
Do you want me to go back to Spanish literacy, or you want me to? Okay, so so I sent some updates earlier. There are a couple programs since we last talked who have been able to continue their work and enhance their work in Spanish literacy. CASA and Catholic Charities are doing classes. Catholic Charities has kind of what they call a blended model, where they're doing some in class, some with Chromebooks and things like that. CASA is doing a little bit more blended Spanish and English literacy. And both have seen their numbers grow to a certain extent, not huge, but they are doing those classes. I think there's another provider that tried to start some classes and realized the folks who thought they wanted classes actually then wanted some English classes. So they just reverted back, but that's fine. They got folks who were interested, they got interested and into some sort of teaching.
Yeah, so I really do want to see more alignment in that space. A lot of the work that we did through our Latino Civic Project with the Title I schools, this was a major challenge. We have a lot of parents who unfortunately, are illiterate in Spanish. And so I think that if we're going to invest resources in such an, important effort, then we need to somehow, I think, kind of institutionalize these kinds of offerings. I'm just, especially in this time, all about alignment and all about how do we leverage our resources. I mean, it's kind of extraordinary that our library system has all these resources that we could be leveraging, but for example, you didn't know about that. And so how do we align all of these things? And just having CASA and Catholic Ministries just working on this, Catholic Charities, that's not enough. I mean, when you look at the numbers, and it's all about being data-driven, the need it's huge. And so I would like to see some concrete ways that we can then, as we move through our budgetary process very soon, what are those kinds of initiatives? And I'll be honest, we did have my office reached out to the county's literacy council. One of the things they said to us was, can you guys help us do the outreach? And which is very interesting, because I always find that to be kind of interesting, how we will fund efforts and organizations, and then after the fund is, then they come back and say, can you, well, if I could do that, then I wouldn't be voting to fund these efforts. So we need to, I think, just put that and put that front and center, because it just has so many implications for parental, involvement in the schools, but also access, if you're not literate in Spanish, how can you then make that jump to learn English?
Right.
It's one of those things. So anyway, I just really would like to see some concrete initiative that we could all evaluate and see if we could get behind.
Yeah, good, thank you.
So, Councilmember Navarro, you bring up a very interesting point. It's part of a discussion point that we've been talking about for a while, because the question is, and you're right, and of course, obviously, with our Latinx population being the largest of our communities of color, we certainly want to be sensitive to that. There are so many that are out there that also have those same sort of challenges, but the reality is that, so is McHale the house for that, being that the name is English literacy, or do we want to promote language literacy, and do we talk about that as well, right? And so that's a question that I think that I don't know if we can answer today, but something we need to think about, because Councilmember Navarro is absolutely right. We need to focus on this, and it needs to be lifted up to that level of significance. The question is, do we lift it up within McHale, or do we create something that focuses on language literacy and keep McHale with English literacy, or do we change? And so that would be a conversation with your board as well about language literacy instead of English literacy. Now, there is no English literacy without your own native
Very
language
true.
literacy, so they go hand in hand. But at the same time, they are two distinct tracks that require a lot of work individually. So that's the question, is that do we, right? And like I said again,
Right.
I don't know if we answer that
If you
today.
want to create a whole other, layer, that's fine. But
I don't know about
if-
one.
Yeah.
we have invested.
we have a structure,
Yeah, we have
right.
invested in this structure. I mean, that's why I kept bringing it up. I think there's some important synergy, because if the goal of McHale is to make sure that you have adults gaining English proficiency, again, there is a very large proportion of those adults who need it, who also need literacy in their own language. And so I don't know, it's above my pay grade. But if there is an ability to coalesce or to form a track or something like that, I just felt that this was a natural space for
Well, how
that.
do you handle it now? If you get, what are you currently doing? You get someone who's needing to learn English, but who is not literate in Spanish,
There-
for example, just as an example.
No, there are a variety of ways that the providers work
I know you
around
don't
this.
handle it, but provide.
I get it. It depends on the person, because it can be very individualized. Some people who, and let's be clear when we're talking about literacy too in this case, if someone is not literate in their home language, it's about the reading and writing component. It is easier to learn another language when you are literate reading and writing ability in your home language. So you can learn to speak and converse in English. It's still a heavier lift, absolutely, without the writing. Again, it depends on the person. Some of our programs, we do have one provider who said, we were starting to offer this, and most people came and said, I need some basic English to get by, right? So they just wanted to go right into English classes. To Councilmember Navarro's point, yes, there are some people who actually want hand in hand. There are many programs for children, right, where we're teaching and learning dual languages at the same time. Different age person, different brain development, different process. That's about all I can say on that, because I'm not an expert either. But it is, it's done in different ways, and some people choose to just get that conversational English at the moment. I'm sure we could look back over time and figure out kind of what people are doing then. Are they going on? Maybe yes, maybe not. So it's a variety of things. Yeah.
What I've seen on the grant side, the community grant side, which we talked about this, is that the Spanish literacy classes on native language has been very specific on the function of it. It's in order to read a particular form, to complete a form for whether it's pathway to citizenship or jobs. So I think the reason why we had this as a topic was to talk about the link between Spanish literacy and English literacy as it links to a pathway. So not just learning French. We talked about learning Vietnamese or Chinese, and doesn't necessarily translate into English literacy, and you might not need that on a form to sign up. So I think the pathway is important, not just the Spanish literacy part. So we do have the Spanish literacy programs that other providers have, but that's not McHale's
moment.
funding, not their funding priority, but to figure out the pathway that links very closely to workforce development or really signing up for healthcare benefits, that kind of thing.
So I think this goes, unless you were going to say something.
I was just going to say that I think that we need to revisit this sooner rather than later, because I do agree with Councilmember Navarro that I'd like for us to have some sort of a structure in place that says this is what we do, instead of just kind of leaving it up to. And that's fine, and I appreciate it, because again, it's not what the mission was defined as, but as you tried to achieve the mission, you found these other obstacles that were in the way for some folks who wanted more. But I do think that there's value in, and instead of just continuing to say, as Councilmember Navarro said, she's been talking about this for a long time. I remember since I first got on the council, we've been talking about this. So it's one in which there does need to be some sort of structured how this would happen if you want to achieve this, and there does need to be, I think, a partner who can say this is the pathway for you if you want that. If you do just want to get the basics for English so that you can do your job for whatever it is that you need to do, you can take that pathway as well. And so
Right.
having those options
Yeah.
are there, but having a structured one that's there for folks to follow, I think would be beneficial. And then in that case, you're not changing the whole overarching structure. You're just creating a pathway within something that already exists,
Right.
which is what Councilmember DeVaro was saying, leveraging the work that's already being done. So,
Well, can I just say that,
please.
and I think that is the beauty of McKell, right? I mean, I know when I was growing Centro Familia and we would encounter certain challenges, then we would shift around and do whatever we could to address that barrier. So when we realized that we needed, English classes, adults, we partnered with Montgomery College, offered context-based English classes because we knew that was a barrier. And so all I'm saying is that I think McKell is very well positioned to perhaps figure out where the partnerships might be, and how we could then, address this. And we should also get MCPS involved. I mean, they have a very large community partnership, parent engagement component, and this also goes straight into the heart of that issue. So there could be, I think, plenty of resources that can be leveraged to address it.
Absolutely.
Right.
Before you move on, I just want to say, before I step out, I know we're not to the point where you're going to lay out your resources to get to your 22,000 goal, which I've heard about since I got on the council. I'm very
Right.
excited about it. So I hope the executive has heard it as well and
so
includes
too.
it in the budget. And
I hope so too.
My comment at the beginning. Right?
But I certainly, this is just a conversation we've been having is another example of how deep and layered and textured the need is.
Absolutely.
And so we want to be able to support you
Sure.
in expanding that
Thank you.
work. So I
Appreciate it, yeah.
really appreciate everything that you're doing.
Right. I think this leads into just a few other things that we're working on that I wanted to highlight. McHale is one of the first organizations and the first cohort of the Racial Equity Action Leadership Training that Leadership Montgomery is sponsoring this year. I, along with a staff member and board member, went through the REI training that I think you all have done last spring, and then it was part of this fall's cohort introduction. So we're doing that. We will, the goal at the end of this, as I understand it, and I think next month we start kind of doing a racial equity strategic plan for our organization, things that we will specifically do. So it's been good at having us reflect on what we're doing for whom, how is our grant process working, what kinds of programs do we have. I think that dovetails nicely on the prior conversation that we were having, working on that and taking advantage of the local resources on that. And the other thing that we're working on, well, two things. Of course, we continue our grant process. We just launched our FY21 grant cycle. And one change that I'm going to mention this year is we looked at our data, looked where we saw programs that were increasing the numbers of learners served, and realized that we have two categories of grants, kind of the more sophisticated, larger program grants, and then the smaller access grants. We hadn't increased the grant level for the access grants in a number of years, and that's also where we saw the most number of learners being served being increased. So we're going to increase that grant level to $20,000 per grant this year to line up, again, with our priorities of reaching more learners, supporting more community-based organizations, that kind of thing. And then the only other thing that I think I would mention is our work. I have a meeting next week with Jennifer, I'm going to mispronounce her name, Arnaz? Arnaz, thank you. I can't see, this is where my lack of pronunciation comes in, Arnaz. Really continuing to figure out, again, if we're not going to workplaces, how are we continuing to affect workforce development, which again, county priority, something that many of our learners are interested in, but in the childcare area specifically, we need more providers. We need more providers in different parts of our communities that are less well served, many of whom don't speak English as their first language. So how can we assist in the training of that and working on that? So she and I will be talking as well.
Can I jump in on
yeah.
that point? Because I think that, again, with WorkSource Montgomery and how we'd like to see WorkSource Montgomery move forward would certainly be in partnership in conjunction with McHale to ensure there's that seamless pathway to a job or to job to elevated positions, right? So if they're in a position and they're stuck there because they can't and don't have the mastery of the English language, and if they had that part to allow them to get to the next level, that's all a part of what it is that we should be looking at and doing to support the continuous movement of all folks in our community, right, to achieve even higher job attainment. And so we know that those sometimes are barriers for them.
Right.
And so working in conjunction, I would assume that a good WorkSource Montgomery structure would support something like that and certainly be able to work hand in hand with you guys. Yep.
Definitely, and also, I mean, we did approve $7 million for the early care and education initiative, and so this would be a great partnership where hopefully when you talk to Executive Elridge, you can mention that. I mean, one of the very important pieces around family childcare, we just got a briefing that I stressed because this is what we did at Centro Familia, was that we would do cohorts, right? And that is a way also of building this network. But English, classes are so critical. Right. And so when you do meet with Jennifer and I, and when you meet with the executive, I think there could carve out a piece of that $7 million to fund this component within the cohort component. They're already going through information sessions and trainings and things like that. So there might be, a group that would benefit from this, and it could be a piece in there. So it's really great that you're thinking about that and in that kind of partnership. But don't forget that there's money that was allocated for that.
Right, good.
And there's already, a process. So let's kind of let's just include that, going through that. The other question I was going to ask, you talked about the racial equity and social justice and the training. How can you give me an example of how you're incorporating that then into the work? Any plans? So, how are you utilizing this lens now?
We are, again, this part of this training is an 8-month training, so we're getting a lot of background and all the training on economic factors, that kind of thing. And we're going to sit down and get our hands dirty with our plan. But what I anticipate, we're thinking about it already as we look at revising language on our website, how things are written, to whom are we communicating, and frankly, I think in terms of our grant process, are we continually, we fund good big programs that are housed in some traditional sectors of our county. Important programs, they have the infrastructure. These are the ones that are very good to invest in because we can replicate and duplicate for less money and continue to reach more people. Are we making sure that we are continuing to figure out where new potential programs are coming out of communities that we have not really had a relationship with before, don't know about us, don't know about that? So I anticipate that we're going to be really thinking about the structure of the grants process, but we're definitely thinking about the language we use. We have definitely been doing specific outreach to communities for our grants panel, for representation that we haven't had as much of or enough of. Same thing with our board. It's a slow process, but it's something that we are being intentional about, that kind of thing. So I think it'll be interesting to see when we get done with this cohort, kind of where we end up. We should have some sort of plan, which I will be letting you know about as soon as that happens. But it's meant to be a full 8 or 9 months of learning, reflection, and my staff. I'm in it with 2 of my staff, and we talk about it after each session. Okay, what do we need to focus on here? So,
great, thank you.
Yeah. I think that concludes all my high points.
Yes, you got them all.
Yes. Okay, good. We have a lot of high points. We continue to have a lot of success. One of the things, just back to bring this full circle, when we were going through our assessment of our name and everything, what we heard continually from people, even those who didn't know us well, I've heard McHale, they have something to do with English, something to do with literacy, but I know they're a really good organization. So we have that bedrock. Just with the name and our new brand and things like that, we can continue to reach more people, to let them know how important this is, not only to leverage resources from that part of the community that's philanthropic, whether it's business or individuals or foundations, but to continue to reach more learners directly.
Very cool.
Anything to add, Ms. Chen?
I think just to review the topics that we discussed on the committee discussion on page 3, one of the things that we've talked about is organizationally how to increase the capacity of the organization itself with something as simple as entering multi-year contracts into the organizations that are listed here. These are programs that will always be supported in some way or another. So being able to do that and opening up the grant process for other organizations or new innovative places, which is why we put monitor future changes to the grants of office management, that you could also help recruit diverse reviewers year round instead of during the cycles. This is for any grant making entity as well. So I think it's important to support McHale in its capacity building, but also remove administrative burden from the organizational structure, or else it keeps continuing. I'm totally solid on the Spanish literacy part, and we will have more information for you at our either next update, or we can send you a memo. The other point was the Workforce Montgomery and Economic Development. We did touch on that, but it's even more formalized than that, of just like a partnership and making sure there's access with any workforce program. And I was talking to Kathy about this because of all the workforce programs I see through the grants process. It has to be part of the program, not just a partnership that if you need it, you might get it. But from the beginning, you don't find a workforce program that doesn't have an English component already, and then already has, because now I'm learning about letters, it's different. You got conversational, you got to be able to write, you got to be, you got to get a job, you got to keep a job, so workforce programs are all different, from child care providers all the way to, manufacturing jobs. So there should always be the right culturally competent and technical evidence-based class. It's not just that someone teaching you conversational English. So I think leveraging McHale's results on that is really great.
Yeah, so, so I do think that this is an awesome opportunity for McHale, given that you guys are the experts in this space, to perhaps, come back to us with, what could it look like? I mean, what could it look like for us to make a big investment, but first, obviously recognizing, the leverages that we have. So we're investing in Workforce Montgomery. We're investing in this early childhood initiative. So what would it take to have, dreaming big, a stepped up initiative? And who are those providers that you think, whether, I don't know, if you're talking about Montgomery College or whatever, but you think may have the capacity to ramp up, if we were able to then say, hey, we're going to invest this much because we understand the critical nature of workforce development, or parental engagement or whatever, where are those pots? How much is that? And let's formalize this. Instead of, we do what we can with McHale, but then we know that there's this pot of money here, this pot of money here, here. Let's kind of, put all that together and envision what that kind of partnership or initiative, however we want to call it, could be. And then let's see if that's something that we might then wrap up. Because I feel like, again, the need is so great. The need is so great. And we're investing in different spaces. But you guys are the experts. I mean, you're the ones that have the proven track record. Let's think big here and leverage all of that. And if we need to then bump up with particular investment, let's do that. But that is very critical to what you were saying, Craig, about, workforce development and this conversation that we're having about economic development. Right. This is huge.
And to link to EDC also is that instead of thinking reactionary on what hasn't been done with EDC and the new leadership there, thinking forward of where do you think, what sectors are going to have the need, whether due to immigration waves or changes in economic, businesses, new businesses there. So addressing need, being reactionary, responsive, but then working with EDC on any changes and that. So, I think there's a lot going on. And all new leaderships. That's important.
So let's do a follow-up, particularly on that aspect.
Yep.
Right. And then we can sprinkle in, and again, not that it's less than, but let's sprinkle in as a part of that meeting also a little bit more of an update about the Spanish literacy.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
And
Great.
And I should actually say language literacy.
Language literacy, yeah.
So, and getting them up to speed. So we can put that as a secondary part of that meeting as well, as a follow-up. Excellent.
And the last thing I would say, just because the census obviously will play into a lot of this in terms of resources, we have been working for the last probably at least 6 months and being part of the county committees that are working on that, but then training some instructors about how to talk about it in classes, giving some exercises, giving folks time to get on the computer, to do time and space to get on the computer, to fill out the forms, so that we're working in partnership with all the other folks in the county that are working on the census. Yeah.
to channel Councilmember Jawando's spirit for the millions that are watching at home, please make sure that you do fill out your census information.
Right.
Make sure that you talk to your neighbors, friends, family members, everyone that you know, even folks that you don't know. If you're sitting in line at the grocery store, hey, you know about the census. I mean, it's important. It really, really is. I mean, if folks care about their own taxes and
Right.
the likelihood of us to not have to raise taxes as much as we do, the census plays a key part in that. And so certainly we want folks to make sure that they're counted. Stand up
Very
and
true.
be counted. So
Yes.
We'll close with that.
Very
And
cool.
thank you very much. It's
Thank
very
you.
exciting to see the great
Thank
work
you
that's
both.
being done.
Appreciate
Again,
it.
we hope, and I
Appreciate
see
the
that
support.
we've got Reverend Lambert from OMB. We hope that the county executive will certainly continue with his focus in adult English literacy and making sure that we have that there. We know it's incredibly important for all the other things that he cares about. And so
Indeed.
we'll see what our budget looks like in March. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we're adjourned. Thanks.